Other one has to stay on. Can you hear me now? All right, thank you. Get the hang of this. Good evening and welcome to the workshop meeting of the Reading Planning Commission here in Reading City Council chambers. My name is William Sanfisi. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Planning Commission, and with me here is Commissioner Peter Rye, and we expect to be joined by at least one of our colleagues on the internet or through Zoom. He's on now. Good evening. We are joined now by Commissioner Nelson De Leon. I see him there. Could you hear us, Nelson?
Likewise, Mr. Gumi.
All right, there he is. Thank you. And here we have also our planning manager, Simon Wangolo, and our planner, Emily Diaz-Melendez, and our planning consultant, Jerome Skrinkoski. And online, I see we have Don Edwards from Public Works, and Michelle Mayfield, our solicitor, assistant solicitor, and Bethany Ayers from the city. Also, from which department is she? I forget. Sustainability, thank you. And then also, I can't quite see. And then also we have City Clerk Linda Kelleher, and I don't know if there's anybody else I've missed. And if anybody else joins, that's good. So our first item of business is the acceptance of the Planning Commission agenda. Were there any changes to the agenda? If not, then unless there's any objection, we can accept the agenda. I would just like to explain briefly that this is a workshop meeting of the Planning Commission, which means it is informal. We do not take any votes. We vote at our regular meeting, which I will explain at the end of the meeting the details about that. So at this time, we would like to invite any public comment. How about by show of hands, anybody who would like to make a comment? There will be two opportunities, as you see. Do you see the agenda? Does everybody have a copy? Both before and after. And as I said, we're not voting on anything, so it won't be too late after. Who would like to give comment by show of hands? You would? Okay. And what I'll ask you to do is come up to the podium, please, and to introduce yourself. And because we only have a few, we might get some comments through the internet. We don't have a rigid time limit, but we'll ask you to keep, sort of along the spirit of what City Council does, like 3 minutes roughly, more or less. So, well, thank you, sir. Is that on, if you want to help?
Probably.
It's the first time I've met in here also. And we're joined by Councilman Jamie Baez, our liaison.
Yes, sir.
Our liaison to the Planning Commission from City Council. Good evening. Okay.
Okay,
Go ahead,
my name
sir.
is Ray Bettle.
We hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. And I live up by Albright, and my major concern and my colleagues are about on page number 8, the distance between residences. Okay, as the last two columns, 200 feet for the data center and the 300 feet. Well, we would like to propose that they're not that close to residencies. Is everybody with me? Everybody on page number 8?
Thank you. I got to get the hang of this. Thank you. We have, that was in the original draft. Our pagination might be a little different because we're working off of a draft that our staff has already begun to mark up, but I think you're referring to this table. Is that right?
I am.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my colleagues and I would like to increase that tenfold from 200 feet to 2,000 feet. And then the next one is 300 feet. We would also like to increase that 2,000 feet. I mean, I just think it's a matter of environmental injustice that they would be built so close to residencies. And that's all I really have to say. I hope you consider that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Did we get the spelling of his name? We have that in the, it's up there. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Christopher Garcia. I live up on Linden Street over by Alvernia. So Albright. I get that mixed up and I live there. Anyway, I agree with him. Of course, the main concern obviously is the specifically setbacks from the residential area. I think otherwise, a lot of what's proposed is honestly very solid. I like that we have closed water loops. That's been a big thing. Concerns about noise, concerns about pollution, concerns about how close it is to the river, and obviously the floodplains that come in through there. That I think is helpful. I did notice that we also have that if the city council were to offer any sort of discretionary, either cutting through fees or providing aid or providing some form of compensation or any sort of support for any of these data centers, that the citizens then have the ability to provide community feedback beforehand to address any concerns. I definitely think that's something that if it's proposed, and even if this isn't listed in here, needs to be advertised very well. So that way people know when that's come up, if the city is doing something where they're either incentivizing or working alongside data centers, that the citizens know they can make a comment and that they can bring up any concerns they have. As we know, it's by the river, there's biking trails by there, environmental concerns are obviously a big issue, but the residential stuff is definitely one of the main things that we are concerned about. I know the one section of our heavy manufacturing district is near the Oakbrook developing houses over there. Right now, that area is mostly taken up by, there's like auto stores and stuff like that. There's different car dealerships and repair shops and all that stuff. If the possibility were to come up that they either vacate and then data centers want to move in, that it's very close to a very high density and a very oftentimes at risk community, having something that would take on so much power and be so close is definitely an issue. So that's why we want to increase it to 2,000 feet. So that way there isn't a risk of something that is providing a notable harm to the community being so close to those residential areas. But like you said, otherwise, there's a lot of good stuff in here. We appreciate a lot of the work that you guys are doing. I know that at the moment, the big topic is we can't, outlaw data centers. That's obviously takes away, it opens up the city to a lot of different potential legal issues. So we're not expecting that by any means, but we do want to make sure that nobody sees this as a open season situation where they can just come waltzing in, purchase whatever land they want, and then have to answer to it afterwards. I did see that there's a lot of yearly things that they have to follow up on. So I appreciate that as well, to make sure that they are not only providing some level of financial support, but also making sure that their electricity is being kept up to date, making sure that it can actually be supported through our infrastructure, because that has also been a large issue with Reading in general. Electricity obviously is not always consistent in the city, and the last thing we need is someone who's coming in with a lot of power that they need and no guarantee that we can actually provide it in our infrastructure. So I appreciate that being part of it and that being something that they have to consistently prove that they are capable of supporting both on their own and also in conjunction with our power grid. But mostly that's all I have for now. So thank you.
Thank you, neighbor. Would anyone else like to speak for now? If not, there will be another opportunity later. Just because you spoke once doesn't mean you can't speak a little bit later if you'd like. So thank you. We appreciate the comment. And that takes us to the item 5, the zoning ordinance amendment, data centers. I would just like to explain briefly that this is not the first time that this body has begun to grapple with this issue of the data centers. Already we've taken one action. We had to review a zoning ordinance from a neighboring municipality, namely Kubru, which proposed to allow and regulate data centers in an area immediately adjacent to the city of Reading. And so we reviewed that as required, and we provided them a letter of support that their ordinance was consistent with our comprehensive plan. But in the meantime, our city planning staff had already begun, as always, they are proactive, and our planning consultant had already begun to consider this issue, and had already drafted a draft amendment of the zoning ordinance. And this body already had looked at that. We have not considered anything formally yet. We just looked at it for input. But now, in light of the resolution which City Council approved, we are now looking to an expedited process to try to work our way through a process which sometimes can take several months. The state and the county also have begun to look at this issue, and we do have to have our plans, our amendments of ordinances approved by the Berks County Planning Commission as well, just to understand a bit about the process. So, and one thing also to understand, of course, it can be a little confusing. We are the Planning Commission, but we're talking here about zoning amendments. And that is because under the city's ordinances, the Planning Commission is required to give its recommendation for any amendments to zoning ordinances. So that is why we are here, to give our recommendation to council, and we get the input from all the different city staff at different departments and the public. And I would just invite our planning manager, Simon Wangolo, to summarize briefly the background on how the city staff has already begun to consider this issue, if you would please, Simon.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Simon Wangolo. I'm the planning manager for the city of Reading. As you are all aware, the idea of data centers has been around for quite some time. As the city, we try as much as we can to keep updated or to have updated ordinances that can guide decisions for our community and basically support our city. The conversation about data centers for us started way back around March, April, when everyone was trying to bring everything into the picture. We have had several meetings with our consultant as a team. And today we are sitting here to discuss a data center. I would like to say that it is one of the decisions that have taken shape, and I really appreciate members who took the initiative to bring this ordinance into play. And I really appreciate especially City Council also for taking a step to introduce this ordinance so that we can talk about it. I know Council Baez is going to have an opportunity to talk more about this ordinance and how it came about and what his role is going to be. But I would just like to let all of you know that this ordinance is being introduced not to be restrictive, but as an opportunity for us to holistically look at our city and understand how we can plan and how we can introduce development using guidelines that can be beneficial for all of us. So, Mr. Chairman and everyone, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming. I'll give you back this opportunity because I know Councillor Baez is here. He will talk more about the ordinance, and with our consultant and the rest of the people in the meeting, we are going to have an opportunity to discuss at length about this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I think where we should start, because we've already had the draft that we had looked at, and incorporated within this is the resolution language from council. I'd like to start with our planning consultant, Jerome Skrzydkowski, because he has already taken the draft that we had begun working on and has updated it, and it's very helpful. Our copy here has the changes in red, and if you would like to summarize those for us, Jerome, that would be helpful.
Thank you. I would first like to thank Councilperson Jamie Baez for putting the draft together. It's a heck of an effort to put everything together and to make sure it's organized. And this is organized, and it almost satisfies everything that we were looking for. So I appreciate everything that Jamie did in advance. It's a great start. What I did was just kept everything in the same order and just provided we might want to take a look at certain things. For example, the first issue that I brought up was that the area that is being considered is identified within the HM zoning district. I had suggested that we also look at the MC zoning district, and then also.
Yeah, just for the public, if you, HM is heavy manufacturing and MC is manufacturing and commercial, right? So make sure everybody understands the jargon. Okay, thank you.
So by considering adding data centers as a permitted use within the MC zoning district, it would be by conditional use. If data centers are permitted within the MC and HM zoning districts, the arguments for restrictions and or exclusionary zoning could be avoided down the line. Now, one thing we also want to do is make sure that we eliminate other overlay districts that would either complicate or contradict those areas. And the TOD overlay district does, portions of it does include land within the MC and HM zoning district. So we would want to either reference it specifically and say it's excluded. Our zoning map has now been updated, so it does depict the TOD overlay on it as well.
And again, if I may, TOD is our new transportation overlay district.
So in drafting other ordinances for other municipalities, as well as reviewing ordinances for municipalities, I've noticed that they've had some additional definitions that we may want to include, which I have provided those in the definition sections as they would appear alphabetically. So these are items that we can consider in addition to the definitions that have already been provided. The next area is on page 5 of the reformatted version, and that's where, again, the MC zoning district was referenced to be included. Also, under section 600-1109, that's the new section that would be dedicated to data centers. And what I had suggested is to make sure that we're tying together the terms that are defined, basically what would a data center include, and then what would a data center use may be classified as. So we just wanted to make sure that it's understood, even if we're not identifying a term within the amendments, we want to make sure that if someone presents an application and if it does fall within that criteria, we can certainly then say, look at it, that is a data center use. The next area of concern was, or major concern was the area, yard, and height requirements, which is the chart. And what I had suggested was just some amendments to the major data centers and campuses to be a little bit larger in size. I think that the data center in general for 5 acres is reasonable. The 10 acres for a major data centers may be something we want to look at. Then also we need to look at the setbacks. Now there's going to be, once we get comfortable with what we select or identify, we're going to have to make sure that there are areas within the city of Reading that someone can actively develop a data center. Otherwise, we go back to that argument of exclusionary zoning. So we'll make sure that fits within the city of Reading. Other comments that I had made were on page 7, which was regards to the requirements for a land development plan. Page 8 was the identification for a major data center, which would provide criteria for landscaping and buffer yards. On page 9 for environmental, I've also added ecological and hydrological impacts that should be looked at, and then included some reasonable setbacks that would apply, such as 500 feet from a perennial stream, or delineated wetlands, or delineated 100-year floodplain boundaries. Also included the areas where there's steep slopes, riparian buffers, and then also that the data center, the principal uses consider environmental, ecological, biodiversity corridors. We do ask for an environmental impact assessment report, so those can be applied within that. With regards to traffic access and construction management, I thought that this section should be reviewed in further detail by the Public Works Department, and if the Public Works Department needs assistance from my office, we can certainly offer that. Other areas, the electrical power, energy management, and utility, we probably need to coordinate this with Med Ed. just to indicate to see if our regulations are reasonable and if there are provisions that we could possibly add and they may provide us. And then I think Jamie has already identified a number of entities that we want to or discuss this draft with. So that would be something that we can coordinate. We do require a utility impact assessment report for certain projects, and then this could fit into that requirement. Next section would be going all the way to page 12, the noise and vibration. This is now a really, really sensitive issue. And I think that Jamie's draft does a great job in identifying this. The criticisms that I'm hearing lately are the low volume and constant hums. And I don't know if there's any scientific data, but I think we should consider comments that may be from a noise or sound expert on this area, so we can make sure that we have something that's generally consistent and we can make it applicable. The other comments that I have in here are rather minor. And like I said, this was just a first review of this process, and we can continue to coordinate efforts with others, including internally with staff, city council, city planning commission, the various departments, and we can move on from there. I think we're on the right track, though.
Thank you, Jerome. I think I would like to invite Council Member Baez if he would like to make a few remarks at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And I also want to thank you because throughout the conversation this evening, you've really broken down some of the words like MC or HM. And I think that's so important for the public and breaking things down for the public. And for myself, sometimes I forget what HM might stand for. So I think, this ordinance obviously being presented, it certainly came about because of the movement that we're seeing across the country with data centers. But also I saw that a neighboring municipality, Kumru, had implemented something. And so once I saw that Allentown was moving, it was pretty much a no-brainer. And when you want to protect waterways, when you want to protect land, when you want to protect your residents, so it was a no-brainer in taking both of those ordinances and putting the Reading one into place. Now, two things that have been added that maybe other municipalities don't have is one, that there's a community benefit, right? There has to be a community benefit. I think that that's important when any company comes to the city of Reading and wants to invest here or wants to put a data center. Two is what I believe is the most crucial thing that we need to have is protecting our waterways. As a matter of fact, I believe there was an email today, and I believe that there was a conversation that was, I don't believe, I know that there was a conversation that was going on whether the water source for cooling could be portable water from Wawa or raw water from the Schuylkill River, and that either way that a pump station would be needed. And I would just ask that we ensure that it is the responsibility of the developer is what I would ask to put something into what is drafted here, that they are responsible for their water pump, for where their water source is coming from, and not put that burden on the residents or on the city of Reading, which trickles down to the residents of the city of Reading. I did hear about the measurements, and that's not the first time I heard the measurements. So I think that we should take that into account on how many feet it is. And I just want to say thank you for everyone moving diligently with this. I really appreciate it. I think it's important, and I'm glad the council supported the resolution that was passed. That's pretty much all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate that. As usual, at this time, we'll see if any of the other city staff, let me ask if the planning staff has anything to add first. Simon or Emily? Nothing at this point? Okay, then we'll see. Go ahead, Simon.
In addition to to the consultant's comments about the data center, we have had also other people weigh in into the ordinance, and I did share a summary of some of the things that other people were concerned about. And so as we talk about these ordinances, we are going to consider many other areas to ensure that the ordinance is comprehensive and addresses the gaps that may exist to ensure it is sufficient to serve the people of Reading. If I can read through some of the comments, there is a concern about stormwater discharge. Someone was concerned that is an area we should think about. There was a concern about sanitary discharge, which came from that is part of the comment. There is a comment about peak heating and cooling systems. There was a concern about design criteria, the aspect of sanitary, storm, and potable water assets that we should think about. There was a concern about the noise, which may result from this ordinance, which is something that we are going to think about as we work through this ordinance. There was an aspect of metering of water utilities. There was a conversation about Rawa, which is one of our main source of water within the city of Reading. The ordinance is going to think about that as well. There was a concern about recycling of electronic components, where after these electronic devices have been used, where are we going to dispose them? How are we going to make sure they are not creating hazard to the people and in the city? So there was that aspect. Yes, the aspect of disposal of the end of the life electronic components stands out as one of the major components. So these are some of the comments that have come in addition to what Jerome shared and the rest of the people. I would like to say that we are open to receiving more comments from the community, the public, commissioners, or anyone to ensure that this data center ordinance is comprehensive and is inclusive of everything to ensure it is quality and brings the value it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Emily.
And then just one comment, there are other parts of just the overall city code of ordinances that would apply by default by the nature of it. And so, but we want to make sure that they are aware of it. So we will be also adding in references like shall comply with chapter, whichever one it is. The first one that comes to mind is 467, which deals with like sewer planning modules and all of that. Our stormwater ordinance, that would still apply and everything, and that's within our saldo as well. So we will be adding those references to other parts of the ordinance that we aren't necessarily in charge of, but would still apply.
Thank you. It's good to point that. It's a standard practice, but it's important to note that. So let me see if we'll start with Don Edwards from Public Works. If Don, if you have any comments yet at this point?
I do not.
Go ahead. I saw your email earlier. I wanted to say, sorry, there's a lag, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, my two main concerns are the water and the electricity. But I don't have any other comments at this time. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate yours and the other staff from Public Works that we've also heard from. Would anyone else from any of the other city departments and entities like to say anything at this time? And again, I know we got your comments, our city clerk, Linda Kelleher, thank you. If you want to say anything, Bethany, is that what the yellow means? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like
Sorry, guys,
Okay.
I'm on my phone tonight. I did want to add something to the electricity to be considered. City Council back in 2019 passed a renewable energy resolution that our goal is to be at 100% renewable energy by 2050. So I would like to have some language added that it is powered by renewable energy, either through on-site or through a power purchase agreement.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. our sustainability coordinator for the city. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else?
This
Okay,
is
then
this is Michelle Mayfield. I just want to this is a little different than what we've done in the past with zoning ordinance amendments with council passing the curative amendment resolution. We only have 6 months, and I think this is I think we're moving along, so this is good. But I just remind everybody that we only have 6 months to get this passed, which means PC, county comments, advertising, etc. through council. So just a friendly reminder on that.
thank you for clarifying the process for us, our solicitor, Michelle Mayfield. Appreciate that, because it is, we're following basically what we normally do, just under a different time scale. But like I
Exactly.
said, we already had started to do our homework on this, the city staff already, but thank you. Anybody else? If not, this will be the time to hear from our fellow planning commissioners. Commissioner Rye?
Yeah, I understand public opposition to this, to data centers. I think my gut sense is that this is a bit of an overreaction, but nonetheless, it's what they want, and so that's fair enough. Take the Reading Hospital, for example. It has a power plant on Parkside Drive North. There are 2 gas turbine units there running every day. I don't know what its capacity is, but my guess is around 10 megawatts. It's hundreds of feet from residential areas. It's next to the museum property. We drive by it every day. It's less than 50 feet from the street. There's no very low setback. And they run a massive cooling system there as well. And you can see the plume from their cooling towers. The cooling towers are everywhere in this city. They're on top of my office building. They're on top of my factory. You know, if Cartech wanted to expand their operation and consume another 20 megawatts, we would welcome the economic growth in our community, right? So I think we have to really take a balanced view of this. You know, we are the consumers of the product that is being made by these data centers. You know, our watches, our phones, what we watch on TV, our social media feeds, all these algorithms that run basically our lives today are what are driving the demand for data centers. This is going to run for the next 10 to 15 years, this massive expansion. It is going to be the largest economic driver of our country because we are at the edge of the leading edge of it. So it's coming. And it's fine if we don't want it here. A lot of communities don't want it. I just would say it's the economic benefit is significant, and we are deciding that we will forego that. And that's what we decided by having such a restrictive policy. But that's what it is.
Thank you, Commissioner. As always, we try to balance the concerns that the city has set forth in our subdivision and land development ordinance and the concerns of all our other city departments and public concerns, and balance that with economic development, which is also something that the city wants. So we try to be mindful of those concerns, be comprehensive with all the matters that are of concern. And it's something to keep in mind. Thank you. Commissioner De Leon, did you have any questions or concerns?
No, I'm good, Will. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a couple technical questions and then just some minor changes as always, edits. For the decibel levels, how does that compare to the level we have in the current noise ordinance in the city?
The city does not have a noise ordinance per se because of the difficulty in measurements. the decibel and having had the appropriate person training. We just had this discussion regarding another board I serve on or serve for. So there is no decibel measuring presently, is my understanding, in the city. It's based on property line.
Thank you. No wonder I couldn't remember the number. Okay. I know there's language in the ordinance about what is considered to be reasonably disturbing. I don't remember the precise language, something along those lines.
Yeah, so it's based, it's time-based, so after a certain time, but then also how, you know, if you can hear it, if your neighbor can hear it from inside their house, then it's too loud, but it's not a measurable sound.
Thank you. The other thing is, again, for the benefit of the public, but also a refresher for us sometimes. I'm going to ask Emily, who used to work at zoning, would you explain the difference between conditional use and, say, variances and special exceptions, please?
Yes, okay. So in zoning, when it comes to uses, we have every zoning district has a table of permitted uses. So the types of permitted uses are permitted by right, special exception, and conditional use. Permitted by right means that it is, you know, as long as it complies with whatever other relevant sections of the zoning ordinance, if it complies with everything, a staff member, someone like me or another zoning officer could approve it at, you know, they submit it, we sign off on the permit, and they're approved. By special exception means that they go in front of the zoning hearing board. So it is permitted, but it requires a little bit more oversight. There would be some special conditions. The zoning hearing board could impose additional conditions as appropriate. And then with variances, it's that there is some sort of hardship that the applicant didn't, or property owner didn't necessarily do themselves. It's just a nature of their lot, and they have to prove that hardship to the zoning hearing board, and then they would decide whether or not they've met that criteria, and then they would approve, deny as appropriate. Conditional use, it is a zoning application. However, it goes through a little bit of a more rigorous process. So it will, they submit the application, they come in front of the planning commission, and they'll, will review their proposal, their project, and then the planning commission will then provide a recommendation. They can recommend to approve or deny. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what council is going to do, because then the next step will be to have a council hearing that is subject to advertising, that is subject to public hearing with public comments. And so then at that point, after the hearing, then there'll be another meeting afterwards in which council will then render the decision. So again, you know, the planning commission could recommend approval, council can deny it, and vice versa. So that's kind of a very quick crash course on zoning approvals and different types of uses, categories of uses in the districts.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Then we always look over every ordinance with spelling, grammar, punctuation, everything. And I would just say, I just had a few minor edits, and that's all. The definitions, they should all be, the headers should all be capitalized like the ones originally are, like the ones that, I forget which page it is, earlier on here, that you're proposing. Yeah, page 3. So that's one, to keep it consistent. I noticed there were 2 sections, A-2s, you'll have to renumber. And then section 600-1109, also on page 5. Section A1, the additional part there, a data center shall include, it should say the following. Always should be a complete sentence before a colon. But what I wanted to suggest is, instead of a list and then the word "and" at the end, it should say "or," so that it's clearer that it doesn't have, the data center doesn't have to necessarily include all of those elements. It could include one or the other of those elements, if that makes sense. And then same with the next part. A data center use may be classified, defined, or identified as the following, next paragraph. And I think that was it. Otherwise, it's very good. And like the others said, this is a very thoughtful, comprehensive approach, like we always try to take with the many considerations and concerns with this matter. Unless anyone has any other questions or comments, I think, go ahead. Oh, the amendment process.
So just real quick, so everyone in the audience and whoever may be online is aware. So the way that the ordinance amendment process goes, so right now it's a workshop, no action is being taken. Provided that, you know, once we make the edits, we incorporate maybe some of your guys' suggestions and everything. If everyone is in agreement with the draft by next week, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to pass it on to the Berks County Planning Commission. At that point, they have 30 days to review it. And we have to allow them the full 30 days before we can take action on going on to the next step. Now, at any point, if there are any substantial edits other than fixing a comma or something like that, it kind of restarts the process. So if the county comes back with some major concerns and major edits that they would like us to undertake, we would make, you know, if we decide to accept those comments, we would make the edits, do the revision, send it back to Berks County Planning Commission. So the reason for this workshop and for kind of all of the discussion beforehand is to minimize that back and forth because, as Michelle Mayfield mentioned, we only have 6 months to get this through. So just once they get it back to us, if they didn't have anything too major at the next Planning Commission meeting after the 30 days for the Berks County Planning Commission, our Planning Commission can then take action to recommend approval to council. Then it goes to council, public hearing, advertisement, all of that. Then they will vote on whether or not to adopt that ordinance. So there are plenty of opportunities for the public to make their concerns known, to come in. You can always email us, call us if there's anything. But if you wanted to come, it will be on the agenda next week, most likely, in order to pass it on to the next step in the adoption process.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Emily. And to anyone, anybody who knows me will know that you can always reach out to me and I can let you know where we are in the process. I don't mind going through a thorough review as well with residents and city and anybody who's interested in having that conversation. I also wanted to note or add, I don't know, but under the data center and the definition, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if we should add large-scale computing operations and the words like digital infrastructure, just so that it's a bit broad. I do also want to touch base on your comments because I think it's very important, right? Like, just like housing and fighting for the Bill of Housing Rights, I say, have you talked to landlords, right? Like you have to look at both sides. And of course, it dawns on me as a business owner yourself, and I know me having a food truck, that it's important to, I think, follow through as the executive branch states that Reading is ready. Reading is ready, right? And then to have, I think, an ordinance in place where it regulates these type of businesses that could, in fact, as you mentioned, bring jobs and bring revenue to the city of Reading. I just sometimes, as a legislator, I have to ask myself, does the risk outweigh the benefit? And is it, I'd rather put the responsibility on the owner of worrying about how he has to get his water or build and us having the regulations, because at the end of the day, I have to think about the way that I'm legislating. Is it in the best benefit of the residents of the city in the long term? And I don't know, or I don't believe that right now what these, and you're absolutely right. I mean, these iPhones, these locations, they need a water source to cool down, right? I just don't know that the benefit outweighs in the long term. With the drought now in Reading, we barely have water. I feel like it's something across the country where we're seeing severe weather. And I just think that we are, sometimes humans can be the demise of ourselves. I mean, we see it every day when we walk down the streets, when we see trash. We have to learn how to pick up after ourselves and make sure that we're taking care of the land that we live on. And so I feel a huge sense of responsibility towards the residents and towards protecting at least the resources that we have, while taking into account that, yes, we do need business and we do need revenue. And I just want to make sure that we're putting that responsibility on the owner. As a food truck owner, I know that there were regulations here in the city of Reading where you couldn't have a food truck. And I've talked with this with the Jerome a couple times. If your food truck isn't 4x8, you can't have it downtown. The one I had was 8x12. So I had to work around as a business owner, and I had to find my clientele. I had to have some revenue. I needed to make sure that I found the solutions to that. So we are in charge, at least as legislators, of placing those regulations to protect the residents. And then it is going to be on the business owner of a data center or manufacturing to figure out how it is that he's going to bring his product, such as AI or intelligence, that I think many of us, including myself, use, and how to regulate that and make sure that they're being responsible on how they're implementing these data centers. But I do thank you for the feedback. I really do, because I think it's important that the public also is aware that there's a balancing act as well. We have to also think about the revenue that, one, we could be potentially missing out, the jobs that we could be potentially missing out. I just, in my personal opinion, try to weigh what the pros and cons are for the future of just humans, and what's the benefit in the long term, rather than the money that we're going to make. Because sometimes money is not everything. Sometimes being alive and being able to breathe sometimes is everything. So thank you.
Thank you. And along those lines, we also have to be mindful whenever we draft ordinances that the language is clear to the businesses, the developers, in this case, and residents, whoever it might be affected by, so that they have proper notice. And we also have to keep in mind, we need to draft the ordinances in such a way that are reasonable and clear and fair, because they have to stand up in court if there are any court challenges. I mean, that's beyond us as individuals. We have, legal advice, but there's always something in the back of the mind, I know, of our staff and consultant, and why they look at model ordinances from other municipalities. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel, right? What is already passed muster? And then we keep abreast of court cases and rulings, or how that language is interpreted by the courts. So those are some of the factors that are in our consideration whenever we go through a process, and it sometimes does take us a few months with as you heard Emily explain, the back and forth. So that's why we try to minimize, do our homework, look at the draft, and give our thoughts and comments as early as possible. Oh, Bethany? Oh. Bethany, if you'd like to.
Yeah, sorry, I just unmuted. I just want to thank everybody for doing such a thoughtful process. When I was in college doing my midlife crisis, one of the things I learned in law and policy was that our ordinances and our codes, all the way up to the Constitution, are our community's standards and expectations and responsibilities and obligations. And, looking for a balanced approach to this is really important. But again, making sure that we have a very clear set of expectations for any potential data center or any business coming in is very important, and it's a good process to go through. So I just want to thank you all for your service, especially for the volunteers who are on the Planning Commission, helping us make good decisions.
Thank you. And our planning consultant, Jerome Skrzynkowski, wants to add something.
Yes, thank you. I believe our next step should be to, and this is my recommendation, would be to coordinate efforts with staff and the other departments that would have an impact with this ordinance to make sure that we are in agreement with the provisions, and more importantly, that we understand the provisions as they're currently written, so we can all have the ability to explain the criteria that does apply in case there are other questions. It is a rather detailed amendment to consider. It's got a lot of language that we might want to consider. We might want to define other terms within here in case we don't understand them specifically. So it's we're on the right track. I think that we can make a coordinated effort within the next month and then get that out to the county for review.
Thank you, and we appreciate very much your input on this. Simon, did you have a vision for forming a working group, I believe, to deal with this going forward?
Yes. The approach we're going to use, Emily mentioned some of it, is that after today's comments that we received, we are going to sit down and review all these comments. We have a working group that contains representative from the City Council, representative from the Planning Commission, the city staff, and different people, some from the county. We take an opportunity to look at ordinances to ensure that these ordinances are inclusive, and everyone bringing different views helps us to address everything at the same time without us having to report all around. And we intend to bring that group back come next week, where we are going to look at all these comments, and then everything should be included therein, and the red line draft is going to be released. That will inform our next discussions, even in the Planning Commission meeting, which is going to happen next week. I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, is that I wanted to mention the fact that the Planning Commission meetings, and this is to the public, are basically public meetings. And this is a venue where the public can come in and make comments and make corrections and advise us as the staff, or even talk to the Planning Commission members. And through us, we can pass a message to council members, but also the council has an opportunity a venue where the public can be able to comment. For this one and many other ordinances, I would like to open up that opportunity and invite anyone who has an opportunity or time to come and be part of this, because we would really, really like to hear from our residents as we work on these ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. And of course, this body is part of the whole theme in the city charter for public participation. So it certainly, it fits in and it is welcome. So unless there's anything else on item number 5, we can move on to any reports or updates. I don't think we have any, do we? Or anything we want to, nothing on blighted property or anything like that at this time?
Nothing out of the normal pattern.
Normal routine,
Yeah.
okay.
There was a community forum on blighted property recently, hosted by PA Spotlight, and Jack Gumbach and David Barr were panelists on that, and I think it was very informative. I think, blighted property review committee is getting very good at adding properties, at regular pace and having regular meetings and making progress on identifying the blight. Then the question becomes what to do with it, right? So now that process is also getting underway, which is very exciting to see.
Thank you. I hope that there were some practical tools suggested there for just that dilemma, which has been a longstanding one, what to do with the properties once we
Yeah.
once we determine them as blighted. And just for the public's benefit, Commissioner Rye is this body's representative on the Blighted Property Review Committee. And we thank you for that. I don't think there are any other reports or updates. So that'll take us to public comment. So we'll have another round here if anyone would like. Would anyone in the audience? Yes.
Can I ask that you bring up the updated version to see the new added definition specifically on what an AI data center overturns? Because I want to get a chance to quick look at that and see what it says I think it should be under the definitions earlier. A little bit further. Here we are. Yeah, artificial intelligence data center designed to primarily support artificial intelligence machine learning. Yeah, I would definitely make sure that any language used there is open to a lot of revision in the future, because the main thing about artificial intelligence is that it is a catch-all term. It can be defined anything. Spell check is considered artificial intelligence. That was a system, like you said, algorithms get used in all of our devices. It's the kind of thing that you may think, oh, I have everything listed down, and then tomorrow they'll find a new thing to call artificial intelligence that they'll call under a data center. So I think leaving that as broad as possible. I know you have like similar advanced computational systems, but again, the concept of what is considered advanced and what they consider to be actual artificial intelligence can sometimes be vague. So just researching into like the way to make sure you're as updated as possible is definitely, I think, a good idea. I wanted to also ask about, I think you said it was TOD, if that's what it was, the transportation areas. Would that refer to some of the areas where something like rail lines pass over, or is that more referring to road systems?
So we have a new overlay that was adopted. If you go on our website, we should have the updated zoning map, and it will show the area. It's basically going to be a designated area surrounding where we anticipate the new train station to be at once we reestablish passenger rail to Reading.
That's what I kind of guessed, but I just want to clarify.
Yeah, so it's a limited area, but it does include some of the MC district, which is why then we're going to put in a provision there that even though it's MC, if the overlay is in that area, a data center would not be permitted, because it's supposed to be for, higher density, have people be able to use the rail and everything like that.
Gotcha.
TOD stands for Transit Oriented Development.
Transit, that's what it was. Gotcha. Thank you. The other one thing I want to mention, I know you talked about the idea of expanding from just the HM district to include the MC district in order to provide more opportunity. I understand where that's coming from the perspective that if we restrict it just to HM, it's a lot more limited. And if we increase, as we propose, the residential setback, that can make it even more limited, and then they can argue that you're being restrictive. I would say that if that's the case, if we want to also include the MC, to maybe start putting models together even to say how much of a setback from residencies can we afford to give before it starts to become a very reasonable thing to argue that, no, you're making it too restrictive. There's nowhere we can set up now, because obviously legally we can't do that. But even just having that ahead of time, I know it'd be a lot of a process to like measure out from every residential however many feet, but having something like that on hand so that if it is brought up in the future would definitely be helpful. And it would also make for a good argument for, yes, we know how much space is left over if we have the setback increased, not just by 200 or 300 feet, but even further than that. We know there are still regions where you can develop. So you can't argue that there isn't, because we've run the models. We know that there are areas still left over after the fact. And I understand that including the MC district would make that more viable, but also then that intersects a lot more with the residential areas, which leads to a lot more of those concerns. The other one thing I want to address, also the economic concerns. As I mentioned in the city council meeting when this was originally brought up, I understand that a lot of people are seeing this as an opportunity. They're seeing it as jobs, they're seeing it as growth. I definitely would say to be hesitant when considering that. Obviously, we talk about, oh, a lot of data centers already exist. A lot of these things are already in place. Why are we concerned now? And the simple answer is because we should have been concerned when it was started, but we just didn't know. A lot of this stuff that we were assuming would be fine all of a sudden isn't, and any concerns that were brought up back then were oftentimes overlooked because of the economic benefits. Obviously, something like the hospital having a specific data center to keep patient information on hand is a lot different than somebody pushing to provide some generative AI tool that will be used across the world, but is being powered here. You have to remember that just because a company is building a data center here, that doesn't mean that their product is exclusively being used here or is being provided a service here. A lot of times that means that they're just using our resources to provide a service to the entire world. We talk about other countries being ahead of us, but it doesn't matter. A company can build a product anywhere, and if it's on the internet, anybody can use it. So I think we definitely need to take that into consideration when we're talking about economic opportunity. As Jamie mentioned, the environmental concern is definitely a bigger priority for a lot of our residences, and that's why we're pushing so heavily. I really appreciate Bethany bringing up renewable energy resources. That to me is something that we should definitely consider. Like we said, if we have a resolution to achieve that by 2050, then we should definitely get ahead of time and really push them to adopt that. And again, like Jamie said, if they're concerned about, oh, well, that's going to be difficult on my business, that's the nature of the market. There's so many different businesses that struggle because of regulations, but it's ultimately so that they don't take advantage of the people in the area. And if it hits their bottom line, then find a new area of business. You have to adapt. You have to be able to actually work within the confines of what the people of this area want. You know, not every market is going to be somewhere where you can force a product in because, well, that's the future. And that is definitely our biggest concern, and why we're bringing up so many issues now is that Gen AI does not feel like a natural progress. It feels like a forced next step that we're all expected to embrace, even if we don't like it. A lot of our devices are updating to include it. A lot of our search engines are updating to include it. A lot of our social media platforms are updating to include it without any option on our end to turn it off, to opt out, to say, no, we don't want to be a part of this. Because there are ethical concerns, but that's beyond this board's, jurisdiction, is debating morals and ethics. Otherwise, though, I really appreciate, again, like, I do think that there needs to be different angles, and I appreciate that we're really getting ahead of this. I think you guys are doing a good job, and I think that this is something that is really unique to Reading. I don't think a lot of places have been this thorough and this ahead of time, so I'm very happy to see that our city has been taking a lot of our feedback into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I forget, the definition about artificial intelligence, that's a good point. We rely for some definitions and explanations on, we have an environmental advisory, what is it, a commission? The committee, right? And they informed us of some of the other amendments that were approved, that were referenced this evening, in fact. But I'm not sure this is something in their purview, so I'm not sure where we would see it. I'm just going to ask the staff to start to think about where we could go to try to clarify that. What does it really mean? So, I mean, because I would certainly ask the environmental committee for their input if they haven't already, but that would be something we might need to go beyond, just like was mentioned about, consulting with the electric company. The comments also reminded me of a technical question I'd like to ask, but I'm going to wait for that. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the one gentleman at the end talked about the zoning ordinance, and you said there wasn't one in Reading. I'm wondering if there would be one adopted specifically for this reason, because I'm hearing a lot of negative feedback from different counties and, on the news about the hearing, the buzz. I know people who moved into the area when I was working at Dana Corporation, and they bought a house because it was great and it was close to work. They hated it. So obviously they were grandfathered in. That's 3 shifts, the continuous pounding in the middle. They hated it, So I'm hoping that there would be a zoning ordinance, and I would think scientifically there can't be like a decimal over a certain amount, because that's what I'm hearing a lot of negative feedback about these AI centers all over. Also,
I think your microphone got turned off. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm hearing tension and anxiety about, wow, we only have 6 months. So obviously people or companies want to get this going right away. I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. I mean, so obviously people want to get ready to do this. I don't see kind of a rush. I don't see why there's a rush. I'm sure hopefully there's an answer for that.
Yeah.
Emily,
We'll let him finish.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good
And,
question.
Also, the papers that we have. Next time maybe we would be able to get the red ones too. The added additions be nice. Okay. Also, I would like to ask you, to maybe like kind of if you like a regular AI center, how many people are hired, how many people with advanced degrees I would like that to be broken down somehow. I mean, is that really going to help the inner city of Reading? I mean, I'm a retired teacher and, you know, hey, let's build this. It's going to be great benefits and everything for the city. Yeah? Okay. Let's see if that happens. I hope it does, but you know, who are they going to hire? Are they going to hire laborers? I'm not sure. So that would be interesting to find out what kind of percentage of the workers are going to be postgraduate doctorates or, you know, just computer or, hey, just trained workers that we could do at RAC here. That would be fantastic. Put a lot of people to work. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. So I'm going to call upon our solicitor to answer that question on the process. Just, we're not aware yet of any developers have expressed any interest in the data center of any kind in Reading. The 180 days is because of the legal provision, which our solicitor will explain, because of the process that the resolution was approved by city council. So we have to act within that 180 days. That's why.
Ordinance to pass.
Yeah, so it's to be proactive in case we have any, but I'm going to let our solicitor explain it better than I can. Michelle, thank you.
You put a very good intro into that. This is basically a stopgap because presently we do not have any regulations for data centers. So if one would come in, there could be an argument that it could go anywhere right in the middle of downtown. It'd be called a validity challenge. So by council enacting this resolution, it gives us 6 months whereby if we would get an application tomorrow, that developer could not come in because this ordinance is being considered. And then they would have to comply with those regulations that were adopted through this ordinance amendment. So it gives us 6 months to get something in place rather than face the potential of somebody coming in and trying to put it somewhere where it would not be ideal at all. So this is not a developer pushing this. This is the law pushing this to help us get ahead of things.
Councilman?
And if I may, I'll add on to that. The reason that I moved with so much haste in getting this ordinance or attempting to get it right pushed through and enacted was because when you don't have a law in place, when you don't have regulations, anyone can come to the city and say, here's my application, right? Now you can't say, well, wait a minute, there are certain studies you have to do, or that you have to check, you know, the grid and how much power we can hold or how much water we can, right? We don't have the regulations. So what this resolution, as Ms. Mayfield was explaining, this resolution of 180 days, it just gives, it basically says, stop, give us time to work on the law before we enact it. So that way, in the meantime, we're not getting applications. And if we do, then we have a way to defend ourselves.
In terms of noise, Section 600-917 does provide some guidelines and criteria for sound levels. However, I do not think that these sound level requirements would be applicable to a data center. That's where I had recommended that we engage possibly a sound expert so that the terminology that we utilize is accurate, and also we can apply it to a data center in the event it is actually permitted within the city of Reading. And again, we go back to those low volume frequencies that are starting to create an uproar.
Thank you. The technical question I have, it's a zoning question. I started to think of, and then the public comment reminded me. So we, in the table that's on page 7 of the amended ordinance, the setback, it's for the lot line or residential zoning district boundary. Where is the boundary line? Is it the middle of the cartway? Is it the sidewalk? Is it the property line?
I would have to double check how it's mapped. It would be however it was delineated when the zoning map was made that way. In other jurisdictions, I know that it's typically the middle of the cartway. But I'd have to double check on how each district was created, and then those boundaries are outlined or in that way.
That's interesting. So it could be a patchwork with different boundary lines for each zoning district? Unless it was done consistently.
Yeah, possibly. I'd have to go back and see exactly how it is.
Just so everyone understands what I'm asking is the zoning district boundary in the middle of the street? Or is it at the property line, let alone the setback where the residence is? And of course, we have different setbacks depending on the zoning district, whether it's R3 or 1 or whatever. So that's something to consider, and maybe considering proximity, such as was mentioned earlier, proximity to which particular zoning residential district. And therefore, what I'm getting at is how far would it be away from somebody's actual building?
Yeah, I think we just need to refer to Part 5 of the zoning ordinance. And if it does not specify that, then we might want to put a provision, a sub-provision in to indicate for clarification points.
Thank you. Does anyone online, do you want to say something, Simon?
I wanted to address the question on definitions. I just wanted to mention that this is the first time we're looking at this ordinance at the introductory stage. What is going to happen is that as we continue 50 years from now, even 20, much more information is going to come in light, and more definition of things will come in light. What happens at the city is, as we introduce these ordinances, we take time to review them time and again, and we update them, basically review them and update them. We discuss, we have a process where we review an ordinance to see if it is making sense. At this period in time, we're basically going through our zoning ordinances to see whether they make sense. At this, considering the time they were introduced to now, are they making sense? And we correct them to make sure they're making sense within this period of time. It is going to be the same with this ordinance, having the fact that it is going to be introduced, adopted by council. We are going to still be reviewing it as time goes by. Yeah.
Thank you. And we certainly have, over the last few years, been working diligently and updating our ordinances, both zoning and our subdivision land development ordinance, with the input of our staff and planning consultant and other city bodies. So that's a good point, that any ordinance could always be amended if necessary. But we try to get it right as right as we can up front. But yes, we always could amend. Anyone else on Zoom have any comment or question? Or anyone else in the audience? If not, I would like to thank everyone for this discussion on this important matter and everyone's input and the civil discussion. Thank you. And that takes us to number 8, our upcoming meetings. So our next meeting will be our regular meeting, July 28th, 2026. That's next Tuesday, also at 6 p.m. here in City Council chambers. So same time, same channel. And then our next workshop would be Tuesday, August 18th, 2026, also here at 6 p.m. Unless there is anything else for the good of the order at this time, unless there's any objection, we would adjourn, and we will then meet next week at our regular meeting. So we don't vote, so we can simply adjourn. Okay, so thank you all very much, and we are adjourned.
Good night. Good meeting.